Back here on Extra Rounds from UFC Fight Pass, I'm TJ De Santis. Pleased to be joined now by the CFFC Featherweight King. It is Jose Perez. When I look at the end of the year, when it always sneaks up on me, I'm always ill prepared for two things, Jose. One, Christmas shopping, holiday shopping. I never get quick enough. But I also have like this really bad like memory on what happened throughout the year and who are candidates for certain year-end awards. And I was talking to one guy in particular here at UFC Fight Pass who handles all that stuff. And he said, you got to talk to Jose Perez, not only because he wants to talk to you in campaign, but apparently there's like a mob of people that are hitting us up at UFC Fight Pass going, so when does Jose Perez get his Fighter of the Year award?
I'm telling you, I think like you said, it kind of slips by people, goes under their nose, and they don't even notice it. But it's really those diehard fans, those people who are really doing their homework and kind of looking at the things that I'm doing, not just looking at like, oh, he got a knockout or oh, he got a submission. Who who did he compete against? Who did that guy face in order to get that finish? Did he fight a tomato can and he got a knockout? If so, great, but that's only worth so much. But in the end, that doesn't hold water. I think like the guys like the fans that have been watching, and some of them are actually fighters that have been like really pushing for me, and I'm really appreciative of that. But they do their homework. They know that they see what I'm trying to do. I think that it's not just the result; it's the approach. How did you get there? So you got to this 7-1 record. How did you get there? Who did you fight?
Right. Yeah, I think those intangibles that you're sort of describing are ultimately what get these awards awarded, if you will, because like when people talk about like the greatest of all time, that's a much bigger, broader subject than Fighter of the Year. But like when people want to talk about Conor McGregor being the greatest of all time, they're not always just talking about his ability inside the octagon. It's like pay-per-view buys and pop culture and moving the needle. And one thing I will say, I mean, if you're getting other fighters that are making your case, like that's the biggest sort of affirmation you could get, right? It's one thing if
Oh,
it,
huge, huge! I love it.
but actual other fellow fighters, man, that's a huge feather in your cap.
Yeah, no, it's a big one. I appreciate it a lot. Like I said, I've been getting a lot of support from like other fighters that have like been on the card, maybe in passing through like other, Cage Fury events that we've been doing. One of them I got a shout out is Aaron Lafarge. I swear he's like pushing the hardest for me. But yeah, I mean, I think that like you said, that means even more than I always appreciate the fans kind of looking out for me. But when the fighters look out, I think that yeah, like we said, um, we see all too often these like supernovas of like competitors kind of like avoiding each other until the last possible like option. Once they've exhausted all efforts, they beat all the tomato cans in the division, and then they finally start looking like, all right, if I need to take a step forward, it's time to start looking at someone more my level, more my peer than these other guys. These like feeder fish is what I'll call them, and I just think that I've been going out of my way to kind of face, like actively been pursuing the other big fish in my pond. I've only got so much reach because I'm in that regional promotion, but it's impossible. You could not prove me. You couldn't call me on a bluff saying that I have been like avoiding anyone or I haven't actively been pursuing those big fish. So even in situations where it's not for a title, like I fought Paul Capaldo, who was a supernova of like a contestant for like the Dana White's Contender Series, or hopefully just getting a shot straight in, things like that. And it wasn't for a title. We fought each other just for the sake of fighting each other, just for the reputation and the name that we would get from it. And I mean, it showed. It showed how good he was. It showed how good I was. And I mean, it's just taking those risks like that. They're almost unnecessary, but for me, it's a pride thing. So I've really been trying to do it different than a lot of other fighters.
And you talk a little bit about titles as well. I mean, CFFC is one of the premier shows on UFC Fight Pass. To be a champion of that promotion in its own right, I think makes the case. But here's the issue I think you're going to run into. And it's not even that they've necessarily accomplished more, but front runners, guys that are in the spotlight, I think, for this, potential award are guys like Bo Nickal, who, his time on UFC Fight Pass relatively brief, but he's been commanding the spotlight. Solomon Renfro is another guy who has want to be in this mix for Fighter of the Year. So like, what can you tell me that would maybe convince not only me, but I have no power, by the way, but the real
Yeah, understood.
power. Like, what do you say to them on why you deserve that over a Renfro or a Bo Nickal?
So just to kind of spice up the CFFC title, CFFC, if you don't know, is predominantly an East Coast promotion.
Right.
I'm from Illinois. When I originally got brought into CFFC, it was not on the terms that they thought I was going to win. It was so I've always been kind of like fighting an uphill battle, and I finally got it to where it makes no difference because of where they're located regionally. I'm going in Capaldo from New Jersey, fighting him in his backyard. So that's got to be factored in. Fighting for the title, Frank Wells, yet again, fighting in his backyard. Um, Bo Nickal would be fighting a striker, someone that they know that he can take down. And obviously he does. He goes in with those wrestling credentials, gets that takedown. These are fights that we knew how they were going to go. And for a while, everyone thought I was fighting these strikers, and they're like, "Oh, Jose's going to go out there and he's going to take this guy down, and go to my comfort zone, the path of least resistance is what I'll call it." And instead of doing that, I've been going out there. I've been not only, like I mentioned, fighting the best guys. I've been fighting the best guys in their backyard
Right.
with hostile crowds. I swear, my family almost got into a tussle in the second round of my last title fight, just because that's the nature of the beast. Rough. I don't know what the profanity rules are on your podcast here, but if I repeated some of the things those guys were saying, I've never heard a crowd say this. Not even like a sportsman or a type deal like that. Just like rough, like profane things. So fighting these guys in their backyard, fighting the best guys, and it's my approach. Path of least resistance would say Jose's going to take that guy down, get right into his comfort zone. Capaldo said he was a wrestler and I wasn't going to be able to take him down. Jiu-jitsu only happens if you take him down.
Right.
Succeeded in every single takedown that I attempted. But I wasn't forcing the shot. I wasn't pressing to try to force the situation to get it somewhere I want it to be. I was matching these guys. I was fighting the best guys where they're best at. Capaldo being a striker and good wrestler, you saw way more wrestling and way more striking in that fight than jiu-jitsu. Going against Wells, there was 2 minutes, maybe a minute and a half of actual grappling exchanges for my last title fight, and that was the finishing sequence. But by all means, a world champion kickboxer, and I'm a jiu-jitsu artist, go out there. I strike with them for 2 rounds. When that takedown presented itself and I was ready to put the cap on it, took him down, took the back, and basically just kind of repeated the same thing I've always done with everybody. Because it's always capable. If we want to go down to those 2-minute finishes or those 3-minute finishes, then we can just refer to the first half of my career, where just under half of all my professional fights have been 3 minutes or less by submission. So those things are capable, but I just think it's my own pride, and obviously, yes, it's a portion of me trying to like appease the fans, but this is me. There's something. I love my grappling. I love it. It's an art form, but it's always A equals B, C, D, and it's very.
Sure.
There's something different about striking with that chaos. And I think that chaos, there's something sexy about that chaos for me. So it's, like I said, it's not my bread and butter, but I'm always going to try to pull their card no matter who I'm fighting. So I'm always putting on, I just think that I've proven that my fights are always exciting, and it's not a gem. A lot of people get these exciting fights and it's just kind of like a gem hidden in like a field of fights where they just kind of like took the easy route out. But I think I've just proven that they're consistent. When I fight, me plus anybody equals barn burner, equals a banger of a fight. And I just think that pays dividends. And I think that's what these fans, these guys that are like going so crazy, these mob of people pushing for me, I think that's what they're pushing for, is they see that and they understand that, and what I'm doing resonates with them.
So were you like on student council, or like are you the mayor of like a Chicago suburb or something? Because you're very politician like here, Jose. I asked one question, and at the end of it, I feel like I've just been told an entire story.
That going into these interviews, when I started doing all these things, that's kind of what they tell me, like, oh, they're setting you up for the alley-oop, and I definitely try to go for the dunk when I get my questions. So yeah, I'd like to be a politician I'd like to be mayor of Harvey at some point in my career, but no, nothing yet. But I hope I get your vote when I vote for council.
Well, I mean, let's not rule it out here. You're swaying me. Again, I don't really have a vote for, Fight Pass year-end awards, but yeah, I don't know. One thing you said that I really appreciate and resonates with me. I'm a Midwestern guy as well. I live in Southern California now, but the idea of going to hostile territory and competing, and not only, doing so with a smile on your face, but getting your hand raised at the end of the night does say something. If you are going out to CFFC, yeah, if you're the Midwesterner, you're going to be fighting an East Coast guy, and those are, you know, taller odds than say if you were fighting at the XFO back in the day
Yeah.
in Illinois. But yeah, like I kind of enjoy the fact that your journey knows no bounds, whether it's the friendly confines or the hostile territories of you know, CFFC. You're going to go out there and try to put the stamp on kids.
Yeah, just to kind of add to that, so opened up the year with Capaldo, and kind of a weird like little backstory to what ended up happening with Frank Wells in the title fight is Frank Wells actually trains with Capaldo and was in his corner for our original fight. So I think that like that holds water too, in the fact that there's no closer seat than the seat right there that the coaches get in the corner. So I mean, this guy Frank Wells had every opportunity to scout me and see what I had to offer. Not only that, but once the fight was over with Capaldo and my hand got raised, he got to work with Capaldo, and Capaldo got to tell him things I was good at, things I was bad at, weaknesses, strengths. And I just think that he was in the perfect position to game plan to beat me. It won't really get, there's no better position to be in from that standpoint than the standpoint he was in. And it looked like a repeat of what happened with Capaldo, maybe a little less competitive. And I just think that that's got to say something, that these guys know what I'm going to do. They know what I'm trying to do, and it doesn't make a difference.
Certainly. You know, your argument holds a lot of water here. And so far, you're the only athlete that has come on extra rounds this year to make a case. So, you know, by default, I think you have my.
I'm pushing the envelope. I'm just pushing that needle a little bit in my favor. I know, like you said, we've got guys like Bo Nickal running around that are in my competition, but you got to be honest. Not that I'd ever say anything, but I think that he's been given more favors than I have to get to the point where we're at.
What do they say? You got to shoot your shot. That's what you're doing.
I'm shooting my shot. That's exactly what I'm doing.
You know, a little off topic here. Again, I said I was a Midwest guy. Grew up watching, you know, mixed martial arts in the early 2000s when it was unregulated. And you're with Gilbert Grappling, correct?
Yes.
So like Joey Gilbert and Dan Gilbert, like those guys are icons to me. And I don't know if you remember back in the day, there was a guy named Tommy Lee who fought. He fought in the WEC, but he was, you know, a handful of 45-pounders, you know, back in the time where, I mean, there was a time, you know, 15 years ago where if you were fighting in the UFC, you had to be 170 pounds or higher. Like the lightweight division, they scrapped it for a few years. But Tommy Lee was a guy where, man, like I was just so impressed with him because he was a lighter weight guy fighting, you know, pretty much anybody, because you show up and you never know in the Midwest if your opponent's going to, you know, actually show up, or you end up fighting a guy out of the crowd. Sometimes you might fight a guy out of the crowd who's, you know, 7 weight classes higher than you. But yeah, you got some OG cred with me as well, training with that crew, the Gilbert Grappling crew there in Illinois.
Yeah, I think I've been like so I started my jiu-jitsu career with if you know Miguel Torres, also from WC, also from the Midwest. That's where the jiu-jitsu comes from. So I'll give him his credit and his due there.
Miguel
And then the
Torres,
wrestling, and basically once the MMA side of things came in. I'm sorry, what'd you say?
I was going to say, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but you know, for people that don't know who Miguel Torres is, I want to like put a stamp on that. Miguel was a 135-pound champion in WEC, and we're talking about where a time where you had to be, again, welterweight or higher to fight in this country on a national stage. He was one of the best pound for pound athletes, like on that pound for pound list at bantamweight, which is insane. That's how good he was.
Yeah, so I think I'm a training, like you kind of said, OG cred. I'm training with all those OGs, those guys that like people in the game know who they are. You know, maybe like more experienced fighters know who they are, but some of these guys, like their names are almost lost in time. But by all means, they know what they're doing. So I think I've got a lot of experience, and like you said, OG credit, you know, with the guys that I'm going with, and I like to try to pay homage. So I mean, my style of jiu-jitsu is a real old school style. I mean, it doesn't look the same as what you see today as far as jiu-jitsu goes.
Right. Yeah. I mean, yeah, again, going back to Gilbert Grappling, like I think that's where Clay Guida started. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Yeah.
Clay Guida was actually so Frank Wells had Dante Rivera in his corner unofficially, and I had Clay Guida screaming at me in my last fight, again, an unofficial corner.
Right.
But by all means, definitely giving me positive advice, and I could hear him.
What's the difference between Guida officially and unofficially being in your corner? Is it that he gets a
So he was there. So they run the Fury grappling event, was the day after Cage Fury. So he was there for his Fury grappling event the following day. But he was he was basically next to the cage. I'm sure that had it been anyone else in the crowd, that security would have came and pushed them back. But that's Clay Guida, so Clay Guida can walk up on the cage and scream at me all he wants, and basically just telling me to stay level headed, keep cool, keep calm in those situations. But yeah, no, it was a big help, and it was pretty cool to have him there.
Let's be honest. If Clay Guida was like in one block over, he'd still be heard with how excited he gets.
Oh, he was gonna get next to that cage. That's what it was. Even if security tried to push him away, he was gonna get there. I know that.
Right. Well, awesome, Jose. I appreciate you coming on, making the case. I guess now the ball's in the court of like Bo Nickal if he wants to come on extra rounds and try to retort. But you're the front runner in my book, and we'll see what happens here before the year is over when it comes to these year-end awards.
Tell Bo Nickal we can do an absolute style, so no weight class.
Okay.
Grappling event. It won't be gi jiu-jitsu. I'm not going to make him do that, but I seen him throw out that slick triangle last time, so maybe he knows a thing or two. But highest points or submission wins, and whoever wins gets UFC Fight Pass Fighter of the Year. We'll see if he's up for that.
Again, I said shoot your shot. You've done that, Jose Perez. Best of luck, and who knows? Maybe we'll see you on the mat with Bo Nickal.
All right, thanks a lot. I'll see you, TJ.